僕は
京太郎が
好きです。
You know, it's really great to say out loud that you love someone else. There's something truly cathartic about it. It almost feels like a promise. But you know, words aren't enough. You need to act on what you say. If you say that you love someone, you gotta show it. And this episode was the perfect setup for Ichikawa and Yamada going forward into the season finale. I know we're not the last episode yet, but this episode brilliantly set that up. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, back again with another review and analysis for The Dangers in My Heart, and this episode truly had it all. Or at least I should say it had all the things that it absolutely needed to have. You had girl talk, you had boy talk, you had drama, you had racing, you had confessions, you had great family and friend dynamics. Really, there's so much to tear into with this episode. You can pick up any sort of little plot that you had along the way, and you could have an hours long worth of discussion regarding, for instance, the atmosphere, the culture, and everything that surrounds idols and actresses and stars, not only in Japan, but really almost anywhere in the world because of all the unique cultures and expectations that are put on the rich and famous. We could also talk about what it means to really be growing up. Does love actually make you an adult, or is it something else? And what about the relationships that you have with other people and how they support other relationships that you have, even if you don't really recognize at first? And what about the impact that social media has on our connections with other people? What is it like when other people begin liking the people that we do, or begin kind of nosing their way into our own lives, exposing our personal secrets and the likes? All of this, there is so much to have a great discussion about here in this episode, and let's see what we can all hit here in this video without going on for 6 hours. Kata 21 opens up with the next morning after Yamada spent the night with the Ichikawa family, and I really like how this all plays out right here with Ichikawa coming on in. Oh, I'm so tired, I don't really... Wait, what? And Yamada's already up, bright-tailed, bushy-eyed. She's getting clean. She's getting nice and presented. She's already brushed her teeth. And I love how Ichikawa was brushing the teeth and how he's handling his toothbrush, and the toothpaste is all just clearly indicating how flustered he is. This was a great moment of physical comedy. And then they part, almost as if they're already in a relationship. Isn't that just fantastic? And Yamada goes on off to begin her movie shoot. And she is doing quite well. This is something that she loves, and now with Ichikawa's support, she's doing it. She's enjoying herself. She's not only strutting her skill, but she's also growing that skill, and it's being recognized by another famous actor. And of course, we got all of the little fun stuff with her mom being all like, you shouldn't have been sleeping over at a friend's house. You have a job to do. There's expectations and responsibility on you. And so the mom is being a good mother, hounding her daughter where she needs to, but also giving Yamada actually plenty of space, good encouragement, and being the proper mother and guardian that she needs to be. I love it when we get positive parents in a story. You don't see too much of it anymore these days, which is a real shame, so it's always great when you get to see that on the screen. As for Ichikawa, who's not at the shoot, well, he goes to see the sakura flowers and the petals fall with the guy friends from his class, and they happen to run into Moe and the others, and I love just, this fantastic dynamic right here of the boys trying to cover up the fact that they were talking about, a scandal of a model who was discovered with her boyfriend overnight. How steamy, how scandalous. And then they try to cover it up, and the girls are like, oh, you weren't talking about that? Well, we're talking about that. And then how it rolls into a conversation about Yamada and what she's doing. And what I said earlier about how everyone's relationships can actually have an impact on your relationship with someone else, you see that right here. You see how everyone has their own unique connection to Yamada, and everyone wants what is best for her, and they either support her directly or indirectly through supporting other people within that friend group. This is again a very important dynamic of friendships, something that we don't see often represented in fiction. It's always kind of like this conveyor belt of one character coming up to the main character, saying or doing something affirmative or doing some sort of actionable thing, having a little arc, and then they move on, and the next character is brought along the conveyor belt. The Dangers in My Heart does not do that. Instead, it brings all these characters together in all of just the messy, complex ways in which people interact and are connected to each other, and we get to hear their different opinions, we get to see their different viewpoints, we get all their personalities clashing and meshing, and that is what we have right here in this moment. It's sweet, it's subtle, it's beautiful, and I've always also really wanted to go and see the cherry blossoms. Fun fact for those of you in the United States, the biggest viewing of cherry blossoms are in Washington, D.C. and in Denver, Colorado. Washington, D.C. because the Japanese Empire actually shipped over to D.C. as a thank you to Theodore Roosevelt a bunch of cherry trees, which are then planted all along the way leading up to Capitol Hill. And over in Denver, because Colorado was one of the few states that offered any sort of protection to Japanese Americans during World War II, Japanese Americans came and planted a bunch of cherry trees in Denver as a symbol of that this was a place that was home to them. So kind of a little fun thing right there, and something that most people don't know, so I thought I'd just spill it out right here. But getting back to the Dangers in My Heart. As the filming continues for Yamada's movie, or the movie that she's acting in any case, things begin to tense up a little bit. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, obviously, between Ichikawa and Yamada, who are trying to communicate each and every day. Mom is watching over Yamada's shoulder, making sure that her daughter is paying attention to her job, but she's still giving her a little bit of room to do what she wants to do and have those conversations with Ichikawa. However, because Yamada is trying to be a little bit lovey-dovey with him, she's trying to get away, which leads to her dropping her phone into the ocean, or at least into a river, some sort of body of water. When Mom comes up behind her, when she's FaceTiming with Ichikawa when she's not supposed to. Oh boy, what it means to be an adolescent yet again. And just love how convoluted and yet so totally relatable this moment is. Ichikawa being a middle schooler, being a young guy who is in love and freaking out what happened to her, because there seems to be this person online, this fan who's stalking her, who knows about her, seems to be following her and getting her personal information. What if it's that crazy fan who came up behind her and isn't actually her mother? Gah! And so he rushes on over to the apartment complex to try to meet up with Yamada's father, and you just gotta love this gentle giant who brings this poor cold kid in out of the storm and is honestly kind to him. And again, just great parenting, great to see a good adult portrayed in fiction. And that is where we get to the confession that is via phone and yet not. And it makes me wonder, I believe that the phone was still connected, which means that technically Ichikawa and Yamada should have heard each other confessing out loud, but they were so determined to speak directly either to the mom or to the dad that they weren't paying attention, realizing that they were saying out loud, I love the other person. So we have again another soft confession. Gah! You guys gotta act on it at some point. Well, as far as Ichikawa is concerned, by admitting to Yamada's father that he is in love with her and that he's honestly going to try to be more mature, be more responsible, he understands, look, this whole situation with sneaking out, the phone getting lost in the water because Yamada was so scared that she might be caught with a guy that she wasn't supposed to, her sleeping on over when she should have been at home getting ready to go to the shoot. I have to take responsibility for my actions, is what Ichikawa is trying to say, and he follows through with that then by being a little bit too overprotective, following Pigman on social media, figuring out what is Pigman doing, how is he stalking Yamada, finding out that Pigman has apparently caught up with Yamada someplace out there and races on to intervene. Come to find out, Monsieur Pigman is actually one of the models that Yamada was shooting with earlier, and this model really looks up to Yamada, and it goes vice versa. These two secretly have really enjoyed the other one's work, really admired the other person, and they just haven't come out and said it. Oh, the disadvantages of an overly polite society that uses vague words and terminology. I say that as a very brash American who learned how to speak German over in Bavaria, which is the most impolite of all the German states. Anyway, Ichikawa is able to discover the real identity of Pigman, that it's Nico, and he and Nico both admire and like Yamada, though in different ways. One is platonic, professional, the other is obviously romantic, in favor of Ichikawa. And as they part ways amicably after stuffing themselves full of ramen, Ichikawa and Yamada go on back on the train, and Yamada's falling asleep on his shoulder, and he pulls back because he's like, look, we need to be mature about this. You are an up-and-coming star and a model. Things are going to change for you, and so if I am going to be close with you, I need to make sure that I am treating you respectfully and appropriately in public in order to protect you and your career, because I care about all of that. To which then Yamada's like, well, thank you, and I'm going to try to be more adult-like as well. And I love how the episode ends with Ichikawa looking into the glass and then seeing the incarnation of his libido saying, I also want to become an adult. Perfect way to end the episode. Again, there is really so much going on here. What should I, as an author, then really focus on with this particular episode? What is of the most worth? Honestly, the whole dang thing is of incredible worth in terms of character development, plot progression, exposing more about various characters, tying up certain loose ends, exposing new loose ends, and then even tying those up and firmly directing us towards the great climax that is going to come at the end of this season. Again, I'm not going to give away the spoilers for what's going to happen later on, because that moment from the manga is just precious, wholesome, and beautiful. Definitely gives Nagatoro and Senpai a run for their money as far as confessions are concerned. But what I really take away from this episode is how you can solidify and communicate strong relationships or nuanced relationships really, really quickly. So let's take, for instance, Nico and Yamada. You have an introduction where they are co-workers working on a model shoot for a magazine. Fantastic, we have that set up. They seem to just be co-workers. But then, through Ichikawa, we get very brief glimpses of this obsession that Pigman has for Anna Yamada. And we also get some glimpses through the social media posts that Pigman seems to just be really deranged and depressed and desperate for Anna's attention. And then, when Ichikawa goes to rescue Yamada from Pigman and then discovers that's actually Nico, you then have Ichikawa dropping the name Pigman and then seeing how Nico responds, and you then have that very terse exchange between the two of them. Nico then goes out and talks with Yamada, and you then have a very friendly, very professional interaction, which then concludes with Nico unblocking Ichikawa on social media, sharing information, and then wanting to become friends. This all happens really, really quickly. And what I like is that we don't pump the brakes to just stop and sit and discuss all these things about Nico, because Nico is not a main character. She is a side character, and we've got way more things to talk about here. But everything that is important about Nico and her relationships with Ichikawa and Yamada are present on the screen, and they are dealt with in the most concise and poignant ways. So, for instance, Nico is obsessed with Yamada, and we finally get full confirmation of that, how much she looks up to her and appreciates her work as a model, and she's just so beautiful and acts so mature for her age, when really we know that that's not the case. And I love how Ichikawa is able to admit to himself in an unironic way that no, Yamada is not perfect, and again, in an unironic way, is like, and I love her despite all of that, because there are those young kids who are like, I know that my beloved is not perfect, but I still love them with a passion of a burning thousand suns, and that's just awkward and cringe. This is an interaction that tells us just how much, again, Ichikawa has grown and how his relationship with Yamada has developed and improved over the course of the series. We then have Nico, who blocked Ichikawa, because like, how dare this guy comes on in and interferes with my obsession over Yamada, block, and then when she comes to find out, oh, this guy's just a concerned friend as far as she knows for Yamada, okay, that makes sense. Yes, I was a little bit obsessive and everything, Unblock, let's be friends. This tells us a lot about Nico, about how the fact that even though she is older, she's immature. She looks up to Yamada not just because she's beautiful, but because she acts mature. That is something that she strives to be. That's something that she wants to be. But also, as a model, she's insecure about herself. You get those little briefest moments of clips, those little posts of hers on social media about, am I invisible? Do people even care about me? I'm so ugly. I'm so depressed. Is life even worth living? And that says, unfortunately, a lot about what Nico's going through. And so what she needs are healthy, positive relationships with other people to help her realize her own worth. And she gets that at the end of this episode. There's so much that we can dig into when it comes to Nico. And honestly, we only got the briefest of interactions with her. And if we as the fans and the writers and the people running the analyses and reviews also, again, just pump the brakes and have a look at these characters, there's so much that can be gleaned from, again, the concise and poignant moments between Yamada and her mother, between Ichikawa and Yamada's dad, between the friends at the Cherry Blossom viewing. All of these moments tell us a lot about these characters, their relationships, and what's going on in their lives. And that is, again, something that I think writers should take to heart. You don't need to overly explain everything that a character is thinking, doing, feeling, what their interactions are, what their relationships are. Instead, you need to work, and it is hard to do this. It's definitely not an easy thing to do, but work on creating concise and poignant moments that very clearly tell the audience this is what the relationship is, or this is what this character is feeling. And you have set it up in such a way that there is still some nuance. There's still things that people can analyze, dig into, and then realize that there's so much more depth to these characters and that this world truly is alive. Now, again, that takes quite a bit of work. That takes you truly understanding your characters, understanding their relationships, and then pulling out the most important details and putting them onto the page or onto the screen in a way that doesn't act like a speed bump to the plot. That just, it flows naturally through the conversations. It's built up over time. It's introduced in background details and then brought to the forefront at the right moment. It's difficult to do. It takes a lot of practice, but that is what you want to do in order to make all of your side characters feel alive and bring them out in the right times, in the right ways, in order to support your main cast and move the plot along, again, in a way that feels nuanced, fresh, deep, and supportive without holding back the pacing or the meaning of the general story. So again, this is why I say that, honestly, The Dangers in My Heart is such a great story. It's not just a fun rom-com, but it's such a beautifully done story. And that's why I've been spending so much time reviewing and analyzing it, because there's so much to praise, so much to dig into. And again, I could be here for just 6 hours alone on this episode, because there's so much in it. So I want to hear from you guys, what you observed, what you analyzed, what things you could dig out of this episode in the comments below. And while you're doing that, if you are interested in other great stories, then please check out the books that I've published. Links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me on this pedantic adventure that we call writing and reviewing the amazing adventures of The Dangers in My Heart. Will Ichikawa and Yamada ever truly mature? Oh, we are about to see, especially with some of the developments currently going on in the manga. But spoilers, I shall not reveal, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.